Yo, it's the Third Party Podcast, Season 2, Episode 7, with Sabria Mills, the Dope Muslim Woman Podcast.
This is your girl, Sabria Mills, from the Dope Muslim Woman Podcast, and it is my honor to be in the building with the Third Party Podcast.
Yo, it's the Third Party Podcast, and I'm Muslim K-Saint, a.k.a. the Muslim Boxer, a.k.a. Mr. 12-0 9-KOs, a.k.a. Mr. NyQuil, a.k.a. Mr. Benadryl. And y'all know what it is with my co-host, Rod DeVoe. What's going on, Chant?
What's up with you, man? Rod DeVoe, Third Party Podcast. Hey, we got a great show today. We have the amazing Sabria Mills of the Dope Muslim Woman Podcast. Sabria Mills, she is a certified behavioral therapist, coach, public speaker, and workshop host. Sabria is known for delivering inspiring and passionate content on her show, the Dope Muslim Woman Podcast. While Sabria has been educated at Georgia Southern University, she has also studied Islamically under Sheikh Muhammad Sharif, Sheikh Muhammad Nanawi, and Sheikh Abdul Karim Yahya, just to name a few. She is originally from Philly, but she has cast a wide net, capturing audiences from around the globe. Sabria, welcome to the Third Party Podcast.
Yo, it's an honor to be here. How you guys doing?
Welcome.
Good.
We're doing fantastic.
Listen, how you like the intro? Did I miss anything?
No, you good. I'm
Sure.
Because
You said a lot of shakes. I was like, damn, she's a scholar.
No, I'm not. Absolutely not.
Where exactly are you from?
I know, that's the question, right? So I am originally from Philly. I'm a Philly girl. My parents are from Philly. My grandparents are from Philly. My parents just had the wisdom and insight when I was born to move to New Jersey. I was raised in Jersey.
Okay, all right.
I was raised in
You
Jersey.
know how sometimes people live close
But
to
I
Philly?
came back and
Yeah.
forth to Philly all the time. I went to school in Philly. We always came back for the community. So I'm a Philly girl.
All right, so your father is a well-known, shout out to Muhammad Worth,
Chihuahua Scouts.
Jawala Scout,
Oh, Brother
youth
Muhammad.
advocate.
We love you, brother.
That's my
Muhammad.
OG.
That's my
like
man
that's my
right there.
OG. Like, how was that growing up with a well-known father, Muslim father like that?
I mean, it was an honor. My father was in my home. So he came home every night. That's one thing I remember as his daughter, is waiting up at night until he came home. Because he always had like candy and stuff for us. But he was there all the time. My father took me to school every day. So I am a woman who was raised by her father. So it's been an honor. My dad is definitely an OG, and he's old school, and he got all his little ways. But it definitely has produced the woman that I am today, for sure.
How important has that been, especially with a lot of the dynamics of family structures, having, a father like that in your house and being able to have that perspective as a
I mean,
married
it's been the
woman?
balance. So my father had this focus on me. So there's 8 of us, but with me, he had this focus. I don't know. Maybe he had some insight of what I was going to do.
Like,
I don't want to
can say
start
it.
no stuff with
My
saying my
mom, was she the
siblings.
favorite?
So when I was like 5 or 6, he pulled me aside and he made me read, and he read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and then like The Art of War and like New World Order. So he always used to say, Sabria, you're my shyest child, but you have to be ready. Like, you have to know how this world works, our political struggle, the struggle we went through as Black people. So he was very, very much made me very conscious very early on. So I felt like I had a lot of responsibility to carry that, because he really only did that with me growing up. So it's really interesting.
How many brothers, how many sisters?
So I have 5 brothers and 3 sisters.
And where do you fall in line?
I'm third to the youngest, the golden child. But I mean, that's low key. That's low key.
She finally said it.
Right. She's been hitting that.
She definitely been hitting that.
that.
She's
No,
like,
it's
you know
low
what I'm
key.
saying?
It's low key.
I don't want to point no elbows.
All right, so you're from Philly,
Yeah.
kind of raised in Jersey.
Yeah.
Where are you now?
So I am in Detroit, Michigan. So I'm in between Detroit and Atlanta, but my home is Detroit. But Atlanta, yeah, I'm all over.
How'd you end up in Detroit?
So I moved there about 2 years ago, and it's just been a journey. It's different. I'm not a Midwest girl. I'm East Coast through in and throughout. So it's been challenging, to say the least.
So is there something in particular that kind of like...
I mean, I was studying. I definitely studied there. Economically, there were some changes that I wanted to pursue. There's a beautiful community there. So definitely studying, traditional Islam. So there were some reasons. There's some strong reasons.
Why you stay? Why did you say you like back and forth Atlanta and Detroit? What made you say that?
Because now listen, I love Detroit and I have serious people who I love there, but Detroit has been through a lot. It's the Midwest. It's very much tribal. It's still tribal. So it takes a lot for people to kind of accept you. So kind of coming in, I was already established as a dope Muslim woman. So to kind of have to try to reprove myself was a lot. I don't mind, but it's been a struggle. So Atlanta is my home base, is where I do most of my work as a dope Muslim woman. So that's why I say I go back and forth.
It's funny, Atlanta has like a magnetism
It does.
for Muslims and people that like
Black people.
like for Black Muslims, right?
Mhm.
Black people, period. I
Yeah.
think
No, you're right.
people just
Black people,
love-
period.
People just love
Yeah.
Atlanta.
I mean, it's a
Yeah.
joke. Like I'd be like, people make hijra to Atlanta all the time.
They do. And they
I
need to
think
stop.
it's like country, but also like it make you feel like people are still like in the city part. It's
Right.
weird, but
It has a
it
weird
give you
vibe.
that northeast coast feeling, but you in the south.
Yeah, when people be wanting changes and they want to fix their life,
Oh, they
They
going to
go-
Atlanta.
yeah.
go to
that's the
Atlanta,
problem,
yo.
though.
Why you say that's a problem?
Well, because first of all, it's overly crowded. So I've been there. I lived there for almost 20 years. So it's overly crowded now at this point. Everybody comes to start over. I mean, the benefit is that you get a lot of love because nobody's like tribal. Nobody's like, everybody's coming there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's overwhelming. Have you drove on a
What
highway
you mean by
yet?
that?
Have you driven on a highway? It's
No.
crowded.
Oh yeah,
It's crowded,
definitely
it's
driven-
more
I
expensive.
fought in Atlanta. Trust me.
You got in a fight?
No, I fought professionally in Atlanta.
Oh,
One
you-
of my fights
okay,
was in Atlanta.
okay.
Nah.
She was ready to go in.
She was
So
like,
you got in a fight,
"Oh,
huh?
you got
I was about
fight,
to
huh?"
switch the host
Right,
around,
right.
How was that?
Right,
How was that?
right.
So, like, can you dive more into like what do you mean? Like, what's the dynamics there compared to here,
Yeah.
and how is it? Because Philly is super crowded, and it's
Yeah,
I think
so you
people
on
are
top of
stacked
each
on
other.
top of each other.
Yeah.
So you saying Atlanta is like that too?
Well, we're not stacked on top of each other because it's much bigger than
Right.
Philadelphia. Just the way it's set up with like the highways and such is very, very crowded. It's also like this place where a lot of people try to go to get on, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Especially like Black people. So everybody want to be like a rapper or like a content creator. So they go to Atlanta. So unfortunately, you deal with a lot of like you gotta really siphon through to not get scammed, and scams are very likely. Like, so it's just a lot going on in Atlanta because it's like the new LA. It's like the new Black LA.
Right.
So it can be overwhelming, especially when you want to raise your kids. It can be a
I
lot.
think Atlanta is a very transient city, right?
Exactly.
Where Philly, people born, raised, die.
It's tribal.
So many things
Mhm.
are established. Where Atlanta, like you said, everybody's from
Exactly.
somewhere else.
Right.
So it's like they're more open and everybody's trying to connect. Where
It's a couple transient states like that.
yeah. Can you think of a time when you actually chose to be Muslim?
Oh wow. Yeah. I was about 12. My parents always put me in Islamic schools. I went to public school 1 year in my life. My parents put me to this all-girls school in Germantown. I'll never forget it because it was like we were in the school, but it was like the wild, wild west in Germantown. So the moment we would step out, it was like fights and police raids. And the girls at the time were doing all kinds of stuff. It was all girls school. And I remember just kind of following. And I liked this boy. I know it's kind of silly, but I liked this boy. And I remember, and I got my little heart broke from him. I was 12. Nothing happened. I just liked him and he didn't like me. And I cried to my dad. I went to my father. I had a great relationship with my dad. And I told my dad, and he never shamed me. He was like, okay, Sabria, he was like, this is a part of life. So he had this like nice talk to me. And he just reminded me about like a woman's relationship with her creator. And so at that point, it was just something that just kind of clicked where I was like, I never want to feel this type of pain. I don't want to be running after this. That's what all the girls were doing. I don't care how, they were young. They were chasing these guys and all of that. And I tried to like a guy because I was very sheltered from my parents. So I didn't really
Me too.
have boyfriends or anything like that. So I was very shy, and I would tell my dad everything. I would like, Dad, they're doing this. What do you think? And he'd be like, and so he was really good at like rearing me. And so at that point I decided like, I want to just know I really want to connect to God. And at that point, that's when I'd say 12, I committed to all my prayers. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Mashallah, alhamdulillah. I committed to all my prayers and all my fasting at that point.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, it was really good rearing from my father, to
Right.
be honest. Good rearing from my
Sounds
dad.
like you guys had a very special relationship.
We did. But yeah, over the years, it's been on and off. But
Don't
that's
do
because my
that,
dad is like firm, you know? So
I love your father. I
We
do.
we definitely love your father.
he
Your
is
father,
old school, ain't he though?
he is old.
Oh my
school.
God. So imagine when I started the almost woman.
He
He was like,
hated when
Sabria,
I
I know
just-
you ain't about to encourage these sisters.
Yeah, I could imagine.
It's dope though.
He's
So-
a great guy.
Professionally,
Yeah.
like who are you professionally?
I work as a behavioral therapist. I work in schools because my first degree is education. So I still like to work with children, but I do work with individuals that have challenges with behaviors or like mental health. I work in that realm. I like children professionally. And then in my business, I'm a behavioral therapist with children during the day. And I'm a behavioral coach with adults at night because I do both. So professionally, but I work with human behavior. It was something fascinating. It was a secondary field that I got into, but it really was something where I was like really fascinated with the idea that like God judges us by our actions and our deeds. And like we may intend something, but like at the end of the day, like we're judged by what we do. So this idea of human behavior and that sometimes we know what we're doing consciously, we're aware, and a lot of times we're not. So I was very fascinated with like how a behavior is developed and like how do you really change a behavior? How do you modify it? So I'm really fascinated with that.
You mentioned your father made you read, the Art of War, Sun
Yeah.
Tzu, and a lot of those books, the autobiography of Malcolm X. Is that what pushed you into?
Well, that made me push to care about the consciousness of our people and the struggle that we've went through collectively as Black people here in this country. We're still dealing with oppression. We see that all around the world. And obviously we as Black people are still dealing with the byproducts of that. And so that really pushed me to really understand the human psyche. And I was really fascinated with us and our resiliency as a people. But also there were things that were targeted within us that made us sort of some of the things I think that challenged us as well. So like, for example, like one of the things I think that was purposely targeted towards Black people was promiscuity, right? And that has a root historically when it comes to how we were dealt with through the slave trade, right? How women were dealt with and exploited sexually, first and foremost, what our men had to endure, how they had to cope. So that is an element. I always hear Black men like, oh gosh, I can't deal with one woman. Now, I'm not going to argue that. Okay, we're not going to argue about that because we know that, you guys have the capacity to be with more than one. But there has been something that has been specifically targeted historically with us as a people, because why? You can weaken a group of people through what? Sex, food, vices, things like that. So that's really like those books really made me understand, well, how can our people be free? Not just like in theory, but like through the things that we are still using to this day to cope, even within the Black Muslim community.
You talking about like where it comes from. You talking about generations.
Yeah.
I mean, it started from even the house Negro and the porch
Yes,
Negro. It
yes.
started from the light skin and the dark skin.
Right.
It started from, and then the when you go to the baby boomers era, and it starts from when the men come back from war, and you go to women need to start working in the women's structure. I don't know. I kind of disagree with you with the promiscuous thing. I don't know.
Y'all don't think y'all think we're dealing with promiscuity in the community?
No, I'm not saying it. I think that's a part of it.
Yes.
But I just think the whole structure of the Black community was definitely attacked on every facet.
I agree. I just
From
use that as
drug-
one example.
Oh.
But
You started with
because I feel like y'all that's the last one that a lot of times men like to highlight. Like they try to act like that's a normal thing. But I like to use that as a first primary example.
Why do you think it's not a normal thing?
Like far as for men to identify that's an issue?
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's just something that you guys benefit from. If we can socialize or create a social norm that it is okay to womanize and sleep with a variety of different women before you even reach the age where you get married and you settle, then you guys, I mean, not you guys, sorry.
Right.
But men
Go ahead
from
and
that.
keep generalizing.
Men benefit from that social norm, and women too nowadays. I mean, now it's becoming a real issue. I was fascinated as it relates to the behaviors that have been passed down from generation to generation. Some of them, some of the behaviors that are conscious that we are aware of, and those that are deep within our subconscious that we're not aware of. But again, like this is some of the stuff. This is what it looks like in today's time.
So one of the things that you focus on is heartbreak. Why are you choosing to focus on that?
Well, yeah, I have a specialization in heartbreak recovery. Recovery, not
Right.
just focusing on heartbreak. So the recovery of it, because I feel like, again, we collectively have been socialized to emotionally suppress,
Mhm.
and that has its root and that has its reasons. And sometimes we do just have to get on with the business of life. But it has been a problem when we put our pain beneath the surface and we don't deal with it. That means that we have maladaptive coping skills. That means we don't really know how to cope. And that's how you integrate into vices, because they suppress things. They're not really aware of what's paining them because you pushed it beneath the surface. I delved into work, or I got a new woman, or I got a new man, and I haven't properly grieved. We don't do grief well collectively as a community.
So when you talk about grief, you mean like relationship?
Yeah, it's
Relationship
grief.
grief.
Any loss,
Uh-huh.
you're gonna
Yeah.
need to grieve. So a
Right.
lot of times we'll have a big breakup, or we'll have a divorce, and we don't think we have to grieve that, right? We don't think we have to actually process and go through the emotions and deal with it in a way that is proper and appropriate, so that moving on is healthy,
When you
right?
mean grieve,
Mm-hmm.
does that correlate with healing as well?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. But
Because I
yeah,
think
go ahead.
sometimes people, I think, for instance, like people know I got divorced as well.
Yeah,
And so I think it was more so, it's probably the same word, but it was like I had to heal from whatever triggers that was before,
yeah.
you actually get married. So is that what you're saying, that they need
Well,
to heal instead of
I don't
grieve?
necessarily have a philosophy that you have to heal before you remarry, but I will say that you at least need to like begin the processing of it. Like a lot of times you don't really heal relationship trauma
Right.
outside of relationship.
Doesn't that go on the specific person though? Because some people are just robots. Some people can deal with
But can they really
multiple-
deal?
and they can. I mean, some people can really deal with multiple women, have no problem. All right, you leave. But then you got other people who are like, you know what?
So
I
that's
miss that
real.
person or something like that, or I got to heal from that person. Or when they get divorced, I think it goes like person to person though, personally.
So I agree and disagree. I would say that like everybody is very different, but I would say that we have normalized stuffing these feelings. Like I don't really care. Unless you really didn't care, that can't be true. And so we like actually not suppressing things and just dealing with your stuff really makes you a stronger human being, and it allows you to be able to go into a next situation where you learn a lesson, because God doesn't give us of Allah, obviously I'm a Muslim, so I believe that Allah doesn't just give us things to hurt for us to suffer. Like we're actually supposed to be learning a lesson so that we can become closer to him. So that's the whole point of the losses and the pain that we go through. We're actually supposed to be learning a lesson, but if you're suppressing it, how are you learning anything? How are you becoming better?
In this era of relationships, heartbreak, and all that other
Yeah.
stuff, how do you feel about Philly Muslim relationships, and how? Because you know what's going on. You might hear some things from the grapevine. You see
Yeah.
some things. You see good in Philly. You see bad in Philly. You see the mix up in Philly. How you feel about the relationships or the dynamic in here?
So if I could be honest, I can't just pinpoint Philly, but I would say that some of our major inner cities, we have a collective issue, right? Like there's some collective issues. There's a big theme of cheating and infidelity right now. That's one of the most common themes I hear right now. As well as, these kind of trauma bonded toxic relationships. Because I want to tell you guys something. This is the first time in history when women do not rely on men for their survival.
Mhm.
Okay, so this has never been a thing. So this is new. So that means now relationships are going through a shift, and no one's really prepared on how to deal with one another, because now you have situations, and I'm sure you guys have had experiences with this. Maybe you have or haven't, where now women are like, "Oh, I'll just leave," right? Whereas historically, women were about their survival. They wouldn't just leave because they needed to feed their kids and themselves. So this is the first time in history. So now you have this situation where it's like, okay, how are we sustaining relationships? Or even like some people are coming into it thinking, how am I going to survive this? So people are more manipulative than they've ever been.
When you say people, like you mean men, you mean women?
I
like,
think both. Both. And remember, manipulation is a tool of survival. Manipulation only becomes bad when the intention turns to something malicious. But manipulation is a tool people use in survival. Like if I'm about to be killed by a lion, I may have to manipulate that situation or, pretend or become something or mask myself in order to survive. So manipulation isn't bad in itself. But when it's used maliciously or when people are trying to survive simply because they lack skills to handle a relationship, now we have a problem. Yeah.
Now it's women don't need men for survival per se.
Yeah.
And it's a greater chance that the women will be like, I'm leaving.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you?
And then men have been conditioned, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, okay? But men have been conditioned to protect and provide, especially within our community. Like that's the scope. If I am providing for my woman and my family and I am protecting, and again, that protection word, I believe has been really about more physical protection. I think that's really been how men have been socialized. So now this idea of like, so when some of that begins to shift, now how are men dealing in these situations, right? Like some men that may come into the table and the woman makes way more than him, for example, right? Or she's just as strapped, if not more than him. Like again, this wasn't happening before, but this is happening now.
What are some of the other issues that you deal with that you think are common in inner cities? Narcissistic relationship. I know it's a trigger word. I don't usually use this term anymore because I know it gets thrown a lot and I think it's used inappropriately. So I often say like people are pivoted into their survival behaviors because a lot of people are not narcissists. It's very rare where someone is a narcissist, but I think when people get pushed up against the wall and they don't have the skills to handle a situation, they revert to their programming, their survival behaviors, and it can feel and look a little narcissistic. I mean, it's definitely a word that
it gets thrown around.
I
don't know. Men think this is like it's the word for me. Go ahead. I know you got.
It's just been watered down.
Yeah.
It's been watered down for like everything. A lot of times, and I'll say this for personal relationships and for the fact of you hear your friends and you talk to your boys, but it seems to be like everything a man does nowadays is narcissistic. Mm-hmm. Literally everything we do. And
so what are you basing that off of?
I think I'm basing it off of the fact of one, I'm basing it off of past relationships.
Yes.
And then I'm basing it off of what I hear from the other men that we talk to, other married men that I talk to, and I guess in my age group. I don't know if the older generations really use that word, but I know 30, maybe 40 and under, they starting to use that word a lot.
Yeah.
Like everybody's a narcissist. Literally, everybody's a narcissist.
Right.
In some form or fashion, everybody has this narcissistic way about them.
Well, everyone has a little bit of narcissistic traits within them because it's really about this like lack of empathy. It's someone that struggles with their self-worth, right? They have deeply rooted self-worth issues. They sort of mask it with sort of this idea that, they're better or they're superior, or it's sort of this masking or this persona that a narcissist does. But it does really come down to like a lack of empathy. We live in a narcissistic society, if you really want to be honest and real. Like we live in a society that is based around individualism, going to get yours, capitalistic model, right? And we're not even going to talk about colonialism and all that other stuff that happened, right? So that is the premise. So then you get into relationships with people and then people find themselves in this cycle, right? Where they are idolized, treated like, oh my God, I found my soulmate. And then they're devalued, talked bad about or brought down or criticized, or that's when cheating happens. And then they're discarded, right? So when people find themselves in this sort of common cycle that sometimes happens, that can feel very narcissistic. Again, but every behavior that people do shouldn't be classified as that because it's more about survival. People are trying to survive difficult situations, and most of us were not taught how to properly communicate when we are in uncomfortable situations or how to have uncomfortable conversations. We were not socialized or reared in that way. So that is something that you absolutely need in a relationship.
So another term that like goes around often is gaslighting.
Yeah.
What's your take on the meaning and how it's used?
So gaslighting is when you sort of alter someone's reality, in a sense, to sort of benefit, to skew it to your to be what you want it to be. It's almost like as if you let's say if, I saw my man cheating, or I saw, him somewhere and he kind of says, "Oh my gosh, are you crazy? Like now you're seeing things," right? Like that's an extreme version of gaslighting. So sometimes the behavior is considered unhealthy. Now that also is a term that's used a lot as well, because also there's a skill that a lot of us don't have, which is called perspective taking,
I was
which
just
means
about to
that,
say that.
right,
Gaslighting is literally
well,
someone's perspective. That's how I feel.
well, not in all forms, but be
Not in all
fair.
forms, but you
'Cause
like you said,
what I just gave you as an example.
You went to the extreme, and then
But that would be
but what
gaslight.
people use actually for gaslighting is like somebody's perspective. Nah, I think the door opened to the left and the door opened to the right, or
Right.
whatever, and they just like, yo, you a gaslighter.
I agree.
don't
That's why I
make no
said
sense.
that's why I said sometimes we don't have the skills, and so we mislabel things, and that's
Right.
how we sort of have these unhealthy relationships. So there's a lot of new information out there, and it is getting misused, and a lot of people are having challenges in a relationship as a result of the misuse of some of these terms.
Right.
And that's why I always say, like, it's better to kind of like get support, and because relationships have totally shifted. They're not like before.
What are some of the common factors that you see when it comes to divorce?
I would just say a lack of skills. I would really say a lack of skills.
Explain that.
Okay. I would say relationship skills. I would say, like I said, I mentioned communication. That's
Okay.
usually a big breakdown. When the communication goes wrong, then like I said, people go into survival mode. So if I don't know how to say or communicate to you what I need, I'm probably going to manipulate to get what I need, because we're going to always seek our needs, right? So then you have the trickle down of problems. And lack of communication, proper communication skills, that means I probably don't know how to set appropriate boundaries. I may be saying, no, I don't want something, but it's in an aggressive way. It's in a non-productive way. It's pushing love away. It's not healthy, right? So like these lack of skills leads to people pivoting into their survival behaviors. And usually when people are surviving, it's the most, what we would call maladaptive, or the most, like, I would say, unhealthy sort of form of our behaviors, because we're trying to survive a situation. So, and that leads to contempt. And I think the research says that the number one cause of divorce is contempt.
Resentment
and contempt.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we Muslim, right? And we understand that, marriage is almost like a necessity, right? Dealing with so many people and the heartbreak, like do you believe in marriage?
I do. I'm
Okay.
a big believer in
Okay.
marriage. I am. I believe in healthy marriage. I mean, my parents were married my whole life, 35 years or something
Okay.
like that. So I grew up in a home of marriage. So definitely, it definitely has its impact. I think like the whole dope Muslim woman persona has been like a heavy burden for me, right? That's been heavy when it comes to my personal life. Like when I started, I was divorced. I had to go through a lot of my own like self-discovery, because here I am as the relationship coach, and I have this whole kind of ideal and persona, but it's like, it's totally different when you go into the public eye, right? Like it becomes its own challenge. But one of the things I really am a big believer in is like, you have to let God rear you. I don't participate in any standardized ideals when it comes to like marriage, longevity. I believe in the model that the Prophet gave, like the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His companions had all types of marriages. He had all types of marriages. That's what I believe in. That's what I try to model my example from. And I know that Allah always rears his servant when he wants them to be better. So sometimes he will put you through a divorce. Sometimes he will make someone really close to you. You'll lose them. They'll die. Like those challenges, and those people become more resilient. So I think I did have to go through like because it was a very public L. Okay. It was a very public marriage, and it was a very public divorce.
How you feel about that? Public marriage and all that?
I mean, it was not.
How do you feel about that, Muslim?
Me? Yeah, how do you? How do you feel
you're a
about
public figure, right?
I ain't gonna lie. I don't care for it anymore.
Absolutely.
Like, I think being married now, I don't really care to show my wife all the time. My wife does not care to be all over my platform. I think more so we communicate a lot more about what we are going to post and how we're going to post it if she does ever come on there. But for right now, I just don't care to prove my happiness to a bunch of people. Like, if without fans, you wouldn't be who you are. You're not gonna be who you are. So I always appreciate them, but they don't need to know what I do in my house.
Sabria, how have you seen social media impact relationships?
Oh, they have a very deep impact, because you know what one of our biggest challenges is in our community collectively is hasad, envy. Okay, envy.
Oh, that evil eye.
Evil eye is very real.
Oh my!
I didn't believe in it until I became a public figure. I mean, not that I didn't believe. I knew it was real, but I didn't really spend a lot of time. We from the Black Muslim community.
Did you get the Dayuth story? I mean, the Dayuth lectures all the time.
No, what was that?
Oh man! So I post anytime I would post my ex-wife, I would get, your wife gonna be a Dayuth.
I never heard of that. I never heard of that. What is that?
So a Dayuth back in the day was a woman who would basically cheat on you if you showed your woman to somebody.
Oh my gosh,
else.
I never heard of that. Have you?
Like the third, kind of like them third hand type. Is
that a particular cultural belief?
I think so, but unfortunately, a lot of Black community has taken on the Arab culture,
of course,
and we just, so we just think it's Islam. So they're like, don't make your wife a dayah. Like, we're not in the 1500s, 1600s where that can happen. Somebody gonna steal your wife. But that was always said to me. Because hasad is real, evil eye.
It is very real, and with the age of social media now, we're seeing record numbers of it, right? So it's
record
really
numbers of
divorce, evil eye,
divorce,
people just randomly leaving,
and people not really having a good understanding of like why their marriage crashed and burned. Like, everything was fine. And a lot of times if you really unpack it with people, they go back and say, well, wait a minute, it's funny things started to happen when I started to, get show on social media. I remember I did a podcast. I would, do this podcast with my husband, and I would wake up the next day. A lot of you guys know, I would wake up, so the next day my face would be big and swelled up, and I couldn't explain it. Like, it's happened like every time we would appear on screen in public, I would wake up the next day
swollen.
Yeah, and I'm like, and of course, like I said, I'm from the Black Muslim community, so we believe in the evil eye, but we don't get too spooky with it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I didn't at the time.
Skeptical.
So I was like, wait a minute, maybe it's something I did, but I actually would end up going to a person of knowledge, and they was like, I really think it's some type of like some type of evil eye and stuff. I think it's very real.
I ain't gonna lie, I went to some people, and a few people who actually have some knowledge.
Yeah.
And I mean, even from the littlest thing of looking at somebody's pants and not saying mashallah after you say like after you look at their clothing, look at their car,
right.
Until you say mashallah or alhamdulillah for what you have, thank God. And for anybody who doesn't know what that means, it just means, alhamdulillah means thank Allah, or Allah is good for whatever he has whatever he's given to you.
Yeah.
But you ever notice how you like drop a plate of food when somebody like, yo, that joint look good? You mess up. You ain't never done that?
It's not really experience. But like I said, I didn't feel it until I became in the public eye. I didn't experience it.
I experienced it after I got into the public eye.
Yeah, I'm not.
You're not big into
No.
Maybe stay off screen a little bit.
Listen, I didn't had.
You have to do a lot of protection to it.
Literally to the point. Yeah, I make my car in the morning to protect me from evil eye because of the public.
So you feel like?
Yeah.
I mean, there are some. I understand the metaphysical, but there are some actual,
of course,
some actual things that are happening,
of course,
due to social media that's leading to the breakdown.
Cheating, bro. I'm sorry, but it's a real issue, and I'm sorry I don't hear. And what frustrates me is that I don't hear enough of our leaders and our teachers and people from the minbar. I don't hear enough discussion about it,
and taboo.
It's become It's too common. It's too common where everyone is having some type of affair, and we all supposed to be Muslim.
Because sex is taboo in the masjid.
That's a problem.
Don't nobody talk about sex in the masjid. They act like sex don't exist until you get married. Until our children turn up pregnant. They act like sex don't exist until somebody have a baby. Other than that, ain't nobody actually talking about sex. And even, DMs. Like, you got a bunch of random sisters in your DMs,
You
bunch
still
of
have
random
that
brothers.
problem? Because I remember you was
I
saying
still got that problem.
it. So
To this day, I
mhm.
still got that problem. Sisters, oh, you want a second wife? You want this? You want that? Like, and you find it disrespectful in a lot of ways because it's like you wouldn't talk to me in person, but now you gonna hit me in my DMs.
Right.
It's weird.
It's
And
sneaky.
the that line of social media has definitely been.
So there's been some sort of like, I don't know, belief that I think via dating apps, social media, that you can just do whatever you want. You can mask who you are. You can create a new persona. So it's really like a lot of people are living in a fantasy world. I mean, you should see the type of weirdo, and I classify it as weirdo because I don't like to normalize stuff. The DMs I get from men that create these personas and
weird.
these sort of beliefs that they are these people that's going, and they
So
have
you
these
get
fantasies.
so you get people reach out to you.
Oh,
via DM.
I do, but I have a very strict process of streamline. Like the way I communicate is
Me
very,
too.
unless I know you, I do not
Right.
Me too.
engage because
Right.
I have had stalkers. I've had people show up in my city.
Wow.
I've had that.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's wild.
How does that feel?
It's very scary.
Yeah.
Show up
very
in your
scary.
city.
Oh yes.
Mm.
Followers from the Dope Muslim Woman, absolutely.
You started the Dope Muslim Woman podcast in what, 2018?
2019, and then went through COVID. Yep.
You went through COVID. I remember you from COVID.
Yeah.
Like, what was that dynamic like? And how'd you get to the point where you got guys stalking you?
I mean, like I said, it's a persona. I mean, you know this probably better than me, but it's like a persona that people get attached to. And obviously, like I have a very serious mission with the Dope Muslim Woman. So it's sort of this, it becomes this like fantasy of like, you know.
Starting that podcast.
Yeah.
How has that impacted your life?
In major ways.
Okay.
Yeah, in major ways. It made personal relationships a little bit harder. Definitely lost a lot of friends.
Why would you lose friends because you started a podcast?
I know it sounds silly, but
What
I
you
think.
Right.
Good question.
Right.
What you
Good
start?
question.
You start airing people out?
No, not at all. But I think that first of all, I was one of the first to start the type of podcast because we run an issues-driven podcast. So that really wasn't being done in the way that I did it, right? Where it's like, okay, we're gonna talk about all the issues we never talk about in the community.
I admire what you do.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, it's kind of one of the reasons why we started this, because to be able to speak for ourselves about our own issues.
Right.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, you're fine.
But I want to
appreciate
tell you, I admire what you do.
Thank you.
And I think it shows like it's brave. It really is.
That's the thing. It took a lot of, I didn't even know what I was getting into. And then once I got into it, once I started talking, and once it just came out, and I would say it came from God, it didn't come from me because I wasn't sitting on these thoughts. It's just when I started talking, this is what came out. You know, you lose friends. I had people that, you know, tried to take down the podcast, restart their own, like, you know, you have this stuff happen. And so you lose as you're evolving, and then you have to evolve because you become accountable and you have to grow, and then you have to, you know, sometimes you leave people behind. So I've lost a lot. And I often say, like, most of my heaviest heartbreaks have been through this work.
So what kind of issues are you tackling?
That's what I'm about to say.
Like,
what
I
are
mean,
what are you saying to the point where you losing friends?
So, like I said, it's that. So again, okay. So it's like, I'm a black Muslim woman.
Right.
Okay, I'm from inner city communities. I'm second generation Muslim. I didn't watch a lot of stuff from my parents' generation, and I decided to say some things outright, especially directly to brothers, right?
Mhm.
Not that I was ever beaten up. Now, I've had more brothers on my show than women, so no one could ever claim that I was the beat up podcast for men.
Right.
However, I don't think there was anyone that was directly saying, like, hold on, Ak. You know what I'm saying? Like, we not, like, some of this stuff, you running through all this stuff, or even you running through all these women or womenizing, or you calling it polygamy, but it's, you know, something else.
Did you take media training? Did you have to?
So I worked in journalism before I started the podcast. I did work in journalism. I worked for a news outlet. And so, yes, I do have journalistic like training. I try to have integrity in what I do.
Right.
So it's not like just messy. I do research
Right.
before every show.
What's some of the trickiest topics you've brought up to the point where you losing friends?
Well, I wouldn't say losing friends, but I would say it was so interesting. I never thought that this would cause as much controversy. I don't want to get married was the topic. And I actually, these young Muslim women came to me and said, we're not getting married. Like, I don't want to get married. And so I created a show off of their storyline. And these were good girls. They weren't out there fornicating. That wasn't what their issue was. They just did not like what was coming to them. They didn't like the trend. These were 20-year-old girls.
Right.
So I based the podcast on it, and I started to before I do a podcast, I usually have like these questions and these prompts, and I try to get engagement from the community, and I was almost ripped to shreds. I had like so many inboxes and so many messages because people tried to make it like I was promoting fornication. And also, I'm sorry to say, and I'm just gonna be honest, the men had a whole fit. Because if they don't want this narrative, like Muslim women have a choice to not get married. They were big on that. Yes. I had to get a scholar before I did the show. It was so bad. I got a scholar to come on my show to tell, like, okay, is marriage even wajib, like mandatory? No, like it only if you qualify, it becomes, and like it's optional. So I had to like actually break down the legal, Islamic legal, kind of qualifications even for marriage, because people were so upset.
So you saying people were saying that no matter what form or fashion, you got to get married?
A woman, yes.
A woman has to get married no
Yes.
matter what form or fashion.
Because I personally believe that men want an accessibility and availability of women.
I mean, I've seen, and this is only in my perspective. I'm
Mhm.
not, I'm not a professional.
Go ahead, tell me.
I feel like in general, Muslims encourage men and women to get married.
Yes.
And when you are not married, it's almost like kind of strange sometimes
I
where
agree.
you have to answer questions to qualify men or women
Mm-hmm.
while you're not married.
Especially at
Right.
a certain age.
I've been around
Especially at a
around
certain age.
people who was like brothers that was like,
I'm good.
I'm not that I'm not associating with other men who not married. So
Okay.
I just and this is not to like
Me,
it's not to like
for sure.
like downplay what you said, but I just in general, from my perspective, I feel like being married is something overall in the Muslim community, Black Muslim community, that is like, yo, you need to get married.
But also, let me just, I agree with what you're saying, but also that comes from a seat of privilege, because there are a lot of, I'm going to say particularly Muslim sisters, and brothers say they have this plight too, but I'm just going to speak for the sisters because I know that perspective, that actually do not have an appropriate pool of qualified brothers to choose from.
I ain't gonna lie.
And so when you tell them that, oh, you got to be married, but there's not an appropriate pool. And I'm sorry, my brothers who are supposed to be leaders are not, I don't see initiatives, not on a wide scale, to work with some of these young brothers to get up to par.
That's
Get
our
some of these
fault.
guys out of prison, but I don't
That's-
see that. And instead, we're like, oh no, why don't you just be in polygyny? It's like every young sister doesn't want that. So she may choose a path forward of celibacy.
But the pool is trash right now.
is.
You got a bunch of young men who are raising other young men who haven't dealt with their issues.
Exactly.
But
Okay.
on the opposite side, you got these
Mm-hmm.
either super strong women
Yes.
who intimidate a lot of these guys, or you have promiscuous women who guys can't deal with, or you have, the same thing with men. You got the toxic
Mhm.
female who really didn't see that father structure or family
Mhm.
structure that they were supposed to. So I think you got I'm not gonna, and then the let's be honest, the ratio for men to women,
Yes.
even though everybody says it's the same, but then you got to take out
Mm-hmm.
men who are in prison,
Mm-hmm.
homosexuality,
Yeah.
that y'all your favorite word, narcissistic men and
Abusive
toxic men, and so you have that small pool. But like I said, like it's like catch-22. It's like you
It
gonna
is.
complain about it, but then you also don't want polygamy, but you want to be married. I don't.
But so what I'm talking about is sisters that are saying, "Ooh, I opt out."
They don't want to be married at all.
And I
But
feel
you
like they have the
opt out.
fundamental right to do that if they are committed to obeying God's limits.
Are they though?
Don't be messy. I'm sorry. That's why I said that criteria.
I'm not
said
gonna
don't
hold
be
you.
messy.
Are they
Oh
though?
my god.
I'm not gonna hold you. Like what?
I know it makes it hard, but
It's-
all I'm saying
it's
is
tough.
that. But
We
bro,
human.
I'm so sick of hearing about the pool of the brothers. But let's work on more initiatives to help develop our young brothers and young sisters. It goes both ways. I agree with you on that.
Here's the thing.
But let's not
how you
talk about
overstep. How you overstep. Like let's just say him, right?
Yeah.
Let's say
Don't say me.
No.
Let's not say
I'm gonna
me.
use him I'm gonna use him in the perspective that you are, for me, right? You're an older brother to me, right? I come to you for advice. I come to you for marital advice.
Yeah.
I come to you to, what to do with children and all this other stuff, right?
Okay.
Let's put this on the other foot. I don't want his advice, and I'm being a terrible dad. For him, he feel like I'm a man, and he out of pocket to just come and tell me, yo, you gotta do this or you gotta do that. Like some men don't want to hear that advice. So it's for us to be like, all right, yo, you gotta get your stuff together in order to do that. But we can't force that narrative on people.
You can't force anyone, but maybe the approach needs to be shifted, right? I always tell people, like, when people are like, oh, why do you do Dope Muslim Woman or whatever? Why is it like that? I say, like, it has a little bit of edge. It has a little bit of controversy. It has a little bit of hipness. Like, I kind of have a look for my particular look. It's all really intentional because there's an element of entertainment. It's almost like you got to give people medicine and the means and the tool in which they can intake it. Like my mama used to put my little medicine on ice cream, right? It's about the approach, and we have to be really creative about ways that we can really reach our people. We can't really give up because there is a very real crisis. There has never been this many singles. And I'm talking about Muslim, non-Muslim, never been.
It's not just a Muslim thing.
It's not just a Muslim.
Because there's plenty of men that don't even see the benefit in being married. It's
plenty
whole
of women
groups,
who don't see. I got sisters who don't.
They don't see the benefit
in their 30s,
in
ain't
being married. So
it's an issue.
It's our problem to solve, though, right? Because
it's our problem to solve.
If we don't solve it, it's going to stay around, and it's going to be whoever is here tomorrow's problem to solve. I can't start when you're a man, right? I can't start when you're 30. So what is it saying? It's easier to raise a kid right than to fix a broken man.
But that's why it's a catch-22 because you can't start when he a young kid, but you also not allowed to. Why can't you? I'm saying that's only if you allowed to talk to the kid.
I mean, but
well, look at my dad. He did the Jawala Scouts. That was
impactful. But your father had this. The thing though. Your father don't talk to these young Negroes now.
He like
he, oh my God!
I'm not saying. I'm talking
about.
Talk
to him about. Oh.
Hold on. I'm talking about the ones that not listening. That he talking to the ones that are already in the space, and he's able to talk to them.
But people like you, I'm just giving an example. People like you and your influence. You're a boxer, right? Yeah. So it's almost like people looking at you, they're admiring you. You have a wider reach to some of these knuckleheads.
I'm trying my best too.
Than most. I'm just saying people like you. I'm not saying I'm not putting it on your shoulder, but I'm saying you do have a reach. You have a wider reach.
And here's the thing, even though I have a wider reach, it can only go but so far because you only going to attract or to be able to really open up to somebody once they open up to you. Especially when it comes to, like you said, the public figure role. I'm an open person. I'm an open book, but I still got to be able to trust you to be like, hey, let's work on this, or
I think you can figure it out.
I mean, you can.
Let's start. We're going. Can we
we're
put
not
it on
gonna say
let's start. So you starting
the Dope Muslim podcast. Dope Muslim.
We're gonna get some of these young brothers married and right.
Listen, I have 4
I'm always with it.
Yeah, so you understand.
So
I know you worry about.
I worry about.
I have 3 daughters.
Shoot.
I worry about who they're marry.
I'm looking at young kids now.
It's serious.
It is.
I want to say young boys. I said I want to say young boys, but I'm looking at kids now.
I know
because I'm looking at who their father is, and I'm paying attention to them now. And you didn't have to do that back in the day.
I feel like as a community, like collectively, by the time we think about it, it's too late, right? I think that as a community, we don't galvanize enough in a way where we really want to solve it. I hear parents talk about like they don't involve in that aspect of their children's life.
Why?
And it's kind of strange to me, right? You guide your kid in you tell them where they're going to go to school, what they want to be, all of this. But when it comes to like relationships in that way, it's like this hands-off thing.
You know why?
Or most people are so delusional. They think their kid is that special.
Yeah. What age you start talking to your kids about relationships or anything?
I mean, my kids starting. We model relationships. Me and my wife model relationships
Yeah.
from the very beginning. So
I'm saying
Right.
what you
I mean,
have conversations
specifically,
with
I
them?
mean, I would say probably around nine-ish. When
Yeah.
I mean, it's really special for you to put your kid in the exactly same environment as every other kid, and you're that special, and your kid is that special that they're not going to be engaged in what
The other kids are
everybody else like. It doesn't
Impossible.
work like that.
It
What about-
doesn't.
So I think that we really gotta take a realistic approach to where we at, what we doing. Listen, I've called like families, like, hey,
Yeah.
listen, I got these many daughters, I got this many sons,
Shoot.
and
Yeah,
they have
I'm
been like, nah, it's too. And I'm like, well, like I know for a fact that your kid is X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
But okay, so I think we have to have that urgency and intentionality when it comes to that raising. Like I mean, we got to raise our sons the same way we raising our daughters when it comes to these
Absolutely.
things.
Absolutely.
But what's really challenging is that a lot of times when we deal with our children this way, we have to deal with our own issues, and we have to deal with our own stuff. And so it becomes really difficult. A lot of times parents do want to put their head in the sand because you really do have to deal with your own stuff when you have to deal with your children. You have to deal with their relationship stuff, or maybe they got involved in something. Like your stuff comes on the table and comes to the forefront. So that's the thing. It's like, I just want our community to stop suppressing. Like, I want us to have the resiliency and ability to deal with our stuff, right? So that when challenges come from our children, or even when we have to rear them, that's not a barrier.
In your professional opinion, what's the age where you feel like you start talking to kids about relationships?
I mean, they're starting, and I'm in the schools,
Mhm.
right? So they're having girlfriends and boyfriends in pre-K and kindergarten.
Listen, Lulu.
So
Lulu's
you have
3.
to start around that
Lulu's
age.
3. This
When
little girl, she playing around, and she just making jokes. She don't really know what I mean. But some kid in her class, she like, yeah. I'm going to marry him. I'll marry him. I appreciated the fact that my daughter looks at marriage like, okay, somebody, because she's
Yeah.
never seen boyfriend and girlfriend. She's never
Right.
seen me, dad, just playing with a bunch of women or bringing a bunch of women. She knows she gotta get married. But I personally think the same thing. Like, I think you talk to them when you see certain things, you see that they like, but that means you gotta pay attention to your kid.
I know.
You
gotta
have
be
to.
actively involved.
You gotta be.
As soon as they get around
Gotta
other
be
children,
a part of your kids.
you gotta
What I saw
believe that
I saw something that was like, you need to binge watch your kid.
Real talk.
I was
Real
pregnant.
talk. You
It's
gotta,
crazy.
because this is the thing though, and us as parents have to start making sure like they are the next generation, so they gonna start just like your father
Yeah.
specifically said. Out of all his 8 kids, I see Sabria doing certain things. Let me start reading. My dad. I see must have got a good memory. We gonna put you in Quran class, or we gonna do certain things. His grandma, we gonna pray to Jesus. we gonna sing some
Listen,
songs.
my
We gonna
grandma
sing some
prayed-
hymns.
She prayed to some Jesus.
You know what I'm saying? We gonna pray to Jesus real quick. But your parents see certain things in you, and they see specific things with specific children. But that's what our parents did when they binge watched us. They made sure they did. We gotta do the same thing.
What's your vision for the Dope Muslim Woman podcast?
Right now, we are more off screen than on screen, to be very honest. Like I do a lot of workshops and speaking engagements now. So the vision is that we want the Dope Muslim Woman to be live with people right there, do active work, active healing. Everybody can't pay for a therapist. Everybody doesn't have access. And we want to make emotional well-being, mental well-being, and spiritual well-being accessible for the community. And we want it to be appealing for the youth. I just had a sister today, I was out in the park, and she said, I started following your podcast and I wasn't Muslim. And then I decided after a couple episodes, I was going to take my Shahada. So we need, alhamdulillah. So we need stuff that is like accessible for people, so that they want to be a part of this beautiful faith. So I want it to be live. I want people to be in person. That's really the vision. That's really the work. Eventually we're going to work towards having retreats where we take people to specific places and we do specific work. Because there's a variety of skills that I teach in a lot of my workshops. that I want the community to benefit from. And we're just going to keep pushing, collaborating with dope people like you and keep pushing.
I saw something like you on a season like 1012. Like what?
Nah, it's season 7, but my seasons are incredibly long.
Okay.
My seasons are like half a year. So
Damn.
7, yeah. So season 7, I'm on I don't know how many episodes. Don't ask me the number. It's been a lot. But yeah, we're called The Journey Back Home right now. Now we're starting a series of mini series on relationships. So this upcoming Wednesday, we are actually doing a marrying outside of my faith. So we have a brother who actually dated a woman that wasn't Muslim, and a woman who's not Muslim. She dated a Muslim man. So we have in both perspectives.
Okay.
Because
You
these
tryna,
are real issues.
You trying to start a Muslim match episode?
That I have started that, and actually it was pretty successful.
Okay.
But it was very stressful, and I need people to go in with me. But I really would like to work with.
I just like personality, so
You think you'll be a good matchmaker?
Huh?
You think you'll be a good matchmaker?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, let's team up. But I really, it's
Absolutely.
a very daunting because you're very responsible.
Yeah, you
So
are.
like
You have
I'll
to
do
be.
all the behavioral analysis and match people, but that definitely is something I want to do.
You gotta, you know where your comfortability is. You know where your tool, where you
Yeah.
have what tools you got. I know I got tools to open people up. We can go ahead
Does
and
he really match well, right? Because
Listen.
I look suspect right now. Do you
You can
you have success stories?
No.
This is Muslim. Muslim, like I could do it.
He
I
could
could
do
do
it.
anything.
Hey, mashallah,
He
that's
could
why
do
you're
anything.
successful.
Listen,
Alhamdulillah.
I will listen, the same way people be questioning it, I'm gonna go learn. I'm gonna go learn how to do it.
I think we touched on this like beforehand.
Yeah.
Talk about like just the struggle of like producing a podcast when people like think it's easy,
It's
and
not.
so you do a podcast that is
Issues
virtual.
driven. So yeah, so we
Okay.
are virtual. We still stream, so we're virtual. We're not live in studio.
Uh-huh.
I'm really heavy on content. I'm not really heavy on the other stuff. I really care about the issues and the topic. It's issues driven. So that's another thing, is that especially my community, they constantly want me to be this positive unicorn place. And I'm like, go to other podcasts, no problem. Like, get your variety. But I'm issues driven. So I'm going to take an issue, and that's what I'm going to use to pivot and address. And I work with a variety of Muslim scholars, imams. Alhamdulillah, they've been very open to me. They've allowed me to kind of collaborate with their communities as a resource. Like, I talk to them about these issues. I send people back to their imams, to their scholars. I work with all their mental health professionals. So we are an awakened spot. We're the spot that wakes people up. And then we send people on their journey. We send people to get the support and help. But we are issues driven, which means that we're going to deal with controversial issues. Yes, we dealt with like sexual abuse in the community, childhood sexual assault. Like, yeah, those are the things. And I remember someone recently was like, why don't you just talk about Black love? Why do you have to talk about the bad stuff? I'm like, there's nothing wrong with Black love. And I have done segments on that. But we unpack the issue to get to the solution. And hopefully we want people collectively working through their stuff. I promise you, it's the biggest barrier we have is we don't work through our stuff.
I think in order to have a successful relationship, you have to understand where those bad things will come from.
Self-awareness.
You have to.
You have
and
to.
this comes in everything. For instance, my boxing, when I'm getting ready for a fight,
Yes.
I think about getting knocked out. I think about losing. I think about having my heart starting to pump so hard. I think about getting ready for the fight too close and wasting my energy. But then I also enjoy the fact that I'm about to fight. So when I do get to the point where I'm about to fight, all of that bad stuff has already been thought about. So it's not worried about no more. So we parallel that to relationships. It's the same thing. You have to make sure that you talk about sexual abuse. You talk about what your triggers are. You talk about, how you actually, who you are as a person and how you can manifest yourself as a husband or a wife or whatever. But the question for you is, how do you promote and help people get to the point where marriage is a likable thing?
I mean, I think that this is my belief. I think once you're willing to have self-awareness, once you're willing to know like where you are, I think the capacity to build relationships with people is you're so much more expansive, right? Like, because you're very self-aware, because you have worked through your stuff, because you're quote unquote healed. I also like to say purifying the soul, which is what we believe in our faith. You desire that which is good and you desire that which is recommended. So you have a more of a desire to connect in relationships. But a lot of times our barriers to our relationships is our stuff. That's why people don't want to connect. People are afraid, to be honest with you. But if I've worked through my stuff, why would I be afraid? Because I already know I have the tools to be able to navigate any challenging situation, right? Because I've processed it and I've learned a lesson that I can apply in my next situation. So I think that, like I said, my philosophy is that, like, you know, the more self-aware, the more you know who you are, the more you can identify what you want. And I think marriage is a really beautiful thing when people are healthy, you know, and then we build healthy marriages and we build healthy communities. Because my bigger issue is our communities. Like, are we building healthy communities, sustainable communities? And that's also another component of it. But yeah,
There's a two-part question with the community and speaking about it. Because a lot of times, you know, me nor Rod like to speak on women issues.
Yeah.
Because we're not
that's
women.
smart.
One, like we try our best to stay away to not disrespect the women's struggle.
No, I'm joking. You guys,
You know what I mean? We try our
but
best.
we would much rather
A
have
sister
We hear
talking
from
about
you.
a
it.
woman
Absolutely.
advocate in a way, because it's things that we can never understand.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I can tell a brother, yo, you got to do this, you got to do that. I can't tell a sister nothing, and I'm not going to.
Okay.
Just like my daughters, I'm pretty sure his daughter, we never going to talk about that cycle when they first get it.
Yeah,
I'm going to be like, go to your aunt, go to your mom, go to them, talk about it. So because you're here, Sister Sabria, for our sisters and for our sister viewers, what would you say sisters can do to look for better brothers and good brothers in their community, in your experience, in your line of work? How can they look for better? Where can they go? What should they
Oh
do?
my gosh.
You know what I mean?
I believe when women work with themselves, okay, and they really understand their own boundaries. And the reason why this is really important, because a woman needs to know where she begins and ends. A lot of times women get in relationships with men before they even know who they are. And then they are subjected or susceptible to whatever kind of that husband has going on. I think a woman should really have self-awareness before she marries, right? A brother can kind of be developing within the marriage, like when he finds his woman. But a woman has to have some sort of solid base, because she's going to be a mother to those children. She has to have something that she's pouring into those kids that's pure, that's from a pure place, right? Because she's supposed to be that nurturer. So boundaries is the first place, so she knows where she begins and ends, okay? Once you have appropriate boundaries, I always say the world opens up to you, because now I know where I begin and end. So now I could talk to I can interact with whoever it is, because I know what my limits are. And I also have appropriate skills to communicate what my limits are. So now actually the whole world is available to me. The whole world of available single men is available to me. Right. So it's not a particular place that I go. It's more about that woman knowing who she is. She's in alignment with herself. So she's already able to identify her equally yoked match. And a lot of times women think that, oh, I want this brother with all this list. Throw that all away. It's really about what your own alignment is and identifying, okay, these are my limits. These are the experiences God gave me. This is what I can handle, what I can't handle. These are my standards. This is how I'm going to approach a situation. And I just feel like, then have at it. Then you shouldn't be closed off to any opportunity or any available brother, because a sister may think for example, she may think she doesn't want polygyny, but until she understands herself and her own, polygyny may be a great fit for her. You get what I'm saying? So I just feel like a woman has to know herself, and then from that place,
Sky's the limit.
Sky's the limit.
So you deal with heartbreak, healing,
ancestral trauma.
Yeah. But you know, it's an emphasis on relationships, right?
It's emphasis.
What is it that men are missing?
Wow. I'm like you. I don't always like to speak on behalf of men, right? I will say that over the years, I've interviewed a lot of men. I think a lot of men have been honest. And I work with tons of women. You know, I would say the main thing is that, like, you're responsible for your own well-being. I don't want to say healing. I'm not seeing a lot of men do the work. Like I see them bumping their heads in relationships or having these issues, and they just turn around and get in another relationship. I'm not seeing them really do their work on self-development. And I really would like to see more of that. And I totally agree that like the therapeutic model of today's time is very feminine based. So a lot of men aren't really feeling that. But like, who are going to be the men and the leaders that create a model that works for Black men, that works for Black Muslim men, that where they can really process their stuff, so that when they're coming into relationships whole and not expecting their ladies to be like their healers. That would be the bigger thing. Like, I want to see men do their work. That's all.
So how you know you whole when you can't get a mud hill?
Well, you can't get a what?
I said, how do you know you're whole when you're king of the mud hill?
King of the Mud Hill.
So
break it down. I'm
gonna elaborate on it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry
I
about
don't
it.
know where this reference metaphor. I don't know where it came from. Sometimes Muslim comes with stuff.
No, my dad used to say. He used to say when I used to memorize Quran. He was like, you only can't get a mud hill until you get to a bigger hill.
Okay.
Until you realize there's mountains around you.
Oh.
And so,
wow.
With these men,
okay.
If he's the best,
wow,
that everybody's looking at,
ooh,
how does he know that there's better hills? There's bigger hills.
That is a great question.
That's
why
what I mean.
Is he the best, and why doesn't he have people? Why wouldn't the best have people, solid people around them to advise them?
But what if? And here's the thing: you got his father is top of the line, top notch, so everybody looking at him like top notch. But then in the community, I mean, outside the community, relative to him, like his father is not that bad. I mean, is not that good of a husband, that good of a father.
Right.
But what they see relative to everything, he's the best. So how do you acknowledge that first? Self-acknowledge
I think one of the bar that we need to set when it comes to men and women and their healthiness is two things. One is their capacity to serve. A healthy person is going to be more in service, and that's men and women, versus a person who's not is going to want to be served. So when you see someone that is the king and that wants, that's a sign. That's a red flag. Another sign of healthy versus unhealthy would be a healthy person is adaptable and flexible and always willing to change and shift and pivot. An unhealthy person is pretty rigid and stuck in their ways. So we need to begin to normalize these sort of barometers so that people that have always been able to reign and, oh, that's a good brother, but this person has been doing the same thing. You have not really seen this person change. You've been imam for 50 years, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it should be some adaptability and change and pivot. Because we saw, if I could give an example from the Prophet's life, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it changed. He was in Mecca. He was in Medina. He went through this war. He had that. He had Khadijah, and he had Aisha, and he had Zainab. He had, all of these different pivots. He was at Ta'if, and they had like all of these different changes that he went through in his life that showed how healthy he was.
Right.
And he allowed us to see that and experience it. We weren't shunned away from his grief when his wife died or his uncle died. So, I mean, that's the model. Like, that's the barometer.
Absolutely.
We need to hold people accountable.
We definitely appreciate this collab. Dope Muslim.
It was dope.
Woman
We had a deep
podcast.
conversation.
I
I feel like I
know,
was in
right?
therapy a little bit. Okay.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
No, I think the work you do is very necessary.
Thank you. You guys
I think speaking our language to us is important.
Yeah.
And inshallah, your platform increase and
Ameen.
grow.
Allahumma ameen.
And so thank you so much for coming on.
Thank
May Allah
you,
keep the
guys.
evil eye away from you.
Allahumma ameen.
And we always say, you do. You have a very dope podcast.
Thank you.
You're very unapologetic. He hate that word.
Because sometimes when people say unapologetic,
Yeah.
they just use that as an excuse to say anything they want.
Right. It's not filthy.
You know what I mean? Like
right.
sometimes it's just an excuse to say whatever you want.
Yeah.
So
and it should always be with integrity. That's my
it's-
motto. It should always be with integrity.
Right. So it's another one of
Gotta have
those
tact.
like gaslight,
Gotta have
like
tact,
one of
yeah.
those words that people kind of throw around. So,
I agree.
So that's why when he say, I'll be cracking up. So.
Even though he know I'm unapologetically.
I say a change maker, and I think any great change maker in society was a little bit disruptive.
Where can we follow you?
Okay. So I stream. So first of all the audio platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, that has a lot of my podcasts if you just want to listen to it when you go to work. But obviously, I do video podcasts, so that's all on my YouTube page under the Dope Muslim Woman Podcast, my Facebook page under the Dope Muslim Woman Podcast. I live stream on Wednesdays, typically, if we have a show around anywhere between 8:30 to 9:30. Sometimes we shift based on prayer time. And yeah, I have an IG, the Dope Muslim Woman Podcast. So we're just put in the Dope Muslim Woman Podcast, it'll come up.
So we usually end with like some lighter questions.
I said, lighten it up.
Hot fire right there. Man.
What did you want to be when you were a kid?
A doctor.
Why?
I think I just always felt like I was smart, and I thought it would make my parents proud. I was like a big time people pleaser, so I started med school, and then I dropped out. Like I started pre-med, and I didn't finish.
Right.
I switched education.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the best city you lived in?
Hands down, Atlanta.
Hands down?
Hands down, Atlanta.
Why?
Atlanta has a lot of love. And Atlanta, I remember when I started Dope Muslim Woman, I was in podcast, I was in Atlanta, and that whole community supported me. Like I go back there, they love me, they know me, they trust me. I love Atlanta. That's my people. Those are my people.
Just gonna bring the Philly out in you.
All right, come on.
You going for a cheesesteak or you going for pizza?
Cheesesteak.
Cheesesteak.
We do pizza in Philly?
Chicken or beef?
Beef.
Listen, pizza's
with the
becoming a
fried
thing.
onions. Oh,
With
y'all
the
do
fried
pizza
onions?
well? I would never get pizza here.
Wait. What you putting on your cheesesteak?
Definitely fried onions. So fried onions is a big thing. So I got a cheesesteak the other day. They just did ketchup and fried onions. But I remember they used to do a little bit more than that.
You put
like
mayo
peppers.
on your
Gotta have mayo on the bread.
You put a little bit of hots?
I do hots.
A little bit of hots. You
I
put a
can
little
have
bit of
some
hots?
some pepper.
Nah.
You don't
just
do
simple?
cheesesteaks?
You just want
He's
the
a
onions
pizza
in it?
man.
No,
I keep
I
forgetting
do
that.
cheesesteak, but
He a pizza man. You don't do a little bit of hot? You don't like hots?
I do, but I'm just not going for it.
What's your favorite Philly slang word? We should go to when you get back here. Do you have one?
I don't know. I'm out of touch.
What's a Jersey slang word that you like?
For Jersey to have slang really like that.
Atlanta.
Hey, Shawty. I don't know.
Hey,
I mean,
Shawty. What's
it
Detroit?
is what up, though. That's a common one. What up, though? Whenever you see people, it's like, what up, though? That's big in Detroit.
All right, it's the last question.
All right. What
do you love about what you do?
I love to watch the transformation of behavior. I love to see people evolve and grow. I love people to have a better relationship, a more sincere relationship with their creator that's not like has all the barriers of like community and relationship and issues. It's just a solid, pure relationship with their creator. But I just love to see people evolve and grow. Like that's very, very rewarding. I would do it for not one penny. Yeah.
Hey man, Third Party Podcast. We had Sabria Mills of the Dope Muslim Woman Podcast, Season 2, Episode 7.
Salams.